Okay, so we've been around and masked up underneath. You see plenty of tape, but as I say, we don't want it going all over. To go around and remask everything. Important to make sure you push down all your edges of your tape as you're going around, especially under here. Now we've had to mask up underneath a lot of it. Got to do these leading edges because they're actually the same colour as the top surface as well, or certainly the grey. So that's what we've done with those. Also, you might be able to see it looks a bit tonal on top. All that is, I've been around with the polishing sponge and got rid of any graininess. Anywhere I could feel a little bit of graininess, a quick rub over with this guy, okay, and a wipe over, and you get the dust all off. And gone round it all like that, and then that way you get a nice super smooth finish. Now, because we haven't pre-shaded this, we can actually go in now and just blast grey all over the place, okay, and with the green, and don't have to worry about it coming through. Now there's two ways you can do this. If you're new to airbrushing and things like this, it might be worth just putting the grey everywhere, okay, stick it down everywhere, then you can put the green on top, then you can go around and do little bits of lightening and fading of panels, and we can do some post shading afterwards. Or just put it where you need it. Now you need to allow for an overlap, and by overlap, literally, you know where you've got the grey areas, because we can see it here on the instructions. We can literally just say, right, okay, well, we'll just bring it around here, but I would say pretty much overlap, because there's nothing worse when you come in and to the green, and obviously what we'll do, we'll mask up for putting the green on, is that it doesn't quite meet, or it's a little bit faded, it's a bit sort of not deep green, and things like that. So for this one, we're coming in with the BS381 or 638. Okay, so we're just got a little bit of room on the trigger. So we just reset the needle, make sure the needles sit in nicely. That's it. Thinner's going in first. Then in with the grey. Okay, good old mix around in the colour cup. Okay, happy with how that is. Put that off to one side. Okay, we just check our flow. Happy how that is, so we'll start. So what we'll do, we'll start back here on this tail and work our way forward. So we know it's roughly going to come in like this, and the rest of this is all going to be grey. So air pressure is a little bit high. We'll just turn this down a little bit. If you get air pressure too high, what can happen is that not only do you get sort of spidering of your paintwork and things like that, but the other thing that can happen is it can dry your paint a little bit too quick. Okay, if it dries it too quick, what happens is it gets very, very grainy, you get that sandpaper effect and things like that. Now we know we've got it coming over here as well. And then we know we're pretty much everywhere below here. Just around those areas. The tail is grey. The tops on the other side is grey as well. Okay, make sure you do the edges of things as well, so like the edges of the rudder and the tops. Okay, just make sure you're in all the little areas. So I'm going to flip it over now, and we're just going to do the leading edge, and that's the reason why we masked. Then obviously we've got to do the front of it, just like so. Okay. And as I say, it's only a rough job, so I'm going to carry on now and put this absolutely over the rest of the model, just putting it in a hole. Then we let that dry, come back, and we can show you how to do the green camo work. Okay, so that's had about 10 minutes to dry. So what we're doing now is exactly the same we did on the underside. Picking up some white into the old colour cup to lighten up this grey, to give it that sort of bleached look to it. So what we'll do two-stage again. Make sure it's got a good mix though when you're dealing with white, because if you get any spots in it on that light colour, you didn't have to worry because you can't really see them, but certainly when you're dealing with a grey, and even worse a dark grey or black or green, dark greens, if you get a little bit of white speck in there, it shows up like a sore thumb. So okay, that's that done. Exactly the same thing, we're just going to blow through so we've got the light coming through. Okay, remember to keep it heavily thinned, that way it blends in a lot more. Exactly the same as we did to the underside. So we're just going to pick out centres, circles. Okay. Just going round. So hopefully you can see we've got it mottling going in. I'm just jabbing back over. So this is one of those things we spoke about. Obviously the dark colours are harder to do. When you come to large areas going downwards, what you want to do is more up and downy type movement. That way you get that sort of bleach to run look. So try and do those across tops. So you're not trying to paint it, you're just trying to literally give it some distortion. Trying to break it up. Okay, exactly the same on the other side. And then what we'll do, we'll just, same as we did before, a great deal on this bit. Just one coat like that, and already it's sort of broken it up a little bit. And then a bit more thinners. Not going to need loads in here, just a couple of drops more. Back in with some more white, he says, almost tipping it over. Two more brushfuls. Take care of that. Good old mix. And all it'll do is to say, same as the other side, just going to break it up, make it look more worn, make it look a little bit more bleached. Okay, now this is quite a bit lighter, so we're going to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more selective how we do this one. Okay, blowing through. Okay. Don't worry too much if it looks a little bit odd, because what will happen is, trust me on this one, when you get the green on and things like that, at the moment you might think, oh, that's looking a bit funny, you know, not too sure about that effect he's doing there, but if you just bear with it, when the green goes on, it does change a lot of things. And then obviously we'll come in with post shading, which will really change things a bit. Okay, that's on like that, you probably see it. Then all we're going to do is just a light blow right the way over the entire model, and just to lighten it up and just to give us a bit of evenness. So there we go, we get something like that. So it's looking a lot more patchy. And I say, when the green goes on, it's the make or break bit. And obviously when the post shading goes on, we can do some very nice weathering effects. Get more on these top areas. There we go, just like that. If it's looking gritty when you put it down, just make sure that you've actually got more thinners added to it, and that will just help it spread it a little bit more. So okay, that's those done. Let's pop the top on. I'm not going to tip this colour back in the pot because it's too light now. It will change the base colour. So we'll just blow that out, and then we're just going to put thinners through the old airbrush, clean the airbrush up and everything else like that, and then we can get on with the green. Okay, so now we come to the bit where obviously doing the actual camo work. So we're happy how that is, and that's totally dry. Now the thing is, with when you're doing camo, obviously you can do it freehand, and that's great if you want a sort of blended edge, or to give it that real worn look, you can sort of feather in the edges. If you want it to make it a little bit more sharp, and the RAF ones tend to be quite sharp the way they're done, it's almost like a brush line. One of the ways you can do it is by using blue tack worms like we've done here. So all these are is literally, it's a white tack. Now the reason for using this stuff, which is white tack, okay, it comes in packs like this, okay, and you have a strip. Now you're probably used to the blue version. Now the blue version of this is just the same, apart from it's got oil in it, and it tends to leave oily marks when you go round. If you use the white tack version like this, you don't have that trouble. So all you do, usual thing, just manipulate it, warm it up. The warmer it is, the better it works. And then once you come along, you can literally place it down, you know, wherever you want it to go, and literally just worm it round like so. And then that way it gives you a nice feathered edge with no troubles at all, so you don't have to paint it or mask it or anything else like that. If we just do up here to show you what we mean, if I just fill in a couple of the gaps, all we do, take a bit of kitchen roll as I tend to do it, okay, and we just stick it over the top, and the white tack will grip it. Okay, so you can come along and just feed it down and just stick it all over the top part like so. And it will go on there, and this masks off our area, and this is the area you want to spray. So for this one we're using the green, which is the BS 351 or 641, whichever way you're looking at it, which in the guns range is the H300. Okay, so good old shake. And what we're going to do is literally just the same as we've done with the others. So obviously for the first pass it's just going to be normal paint. So we're not going to need tons of this. And then what we'll do, we'll lighten it and fade it just as we did all the others. A bit more in that. Just goes in. He said, getting himself covered in it. And then we just, with our brush, good old mix. Over like so. Now the thing is, we want to spray this, is to spray it what I call dry. And by dry, what I actually mean is, if we bring this in a little bit, what I mean is that we don't flood the area, so it's always keeping a dryish to the touch. So what we're going to do, right from above, tracing around that outside line. Okay, then we can colour back in, and when it's looking wet or anything else like that, all we'll do is cut to air, just air alone, and just dry it down. You probably see it drying off there. Okay, now if you use a thicker mix of paint to thinner, what will happen is you'll naturally get a line. So if we just leave at the top. Okay, we'll just dry this off. Okay, now normally you would wait a good amount of time before doing what I'm about to do next. Okay, so we just make sure that the leading edge blown in. As I say, normally you would wait, now do the rest of it all and away you go, but I'll show you what we've got. So we just peel it off like so. Okay, then very carefully we can unwind our tack, and there we have our camo pattern. Now it's not rock hard. We didn't want a totally rock hard finish to this. It's still got a little bit. If you wanted a totally hard one, you could actually put the paper down onto it or tape and just go around it. But what it'll do, it gives us this type of effect, which gives us a pretty hard line and everything else. Now I'm going to have to go back in a moment and lighten up those panels just the same way as we did with the grey to give it that sort of mottled in effect, but it gives you a good idea of how to do it without too much messing around and playing around with various things. So what I'm going to do is use that principle to go completely over the rest of the aircraft completely, Okay, so what we're doing now, we're actually going round and post shading a little bit for the moment. We'll come out with some black, but all we're using is the original black, the original grey of the 331, which is this grey here before we lightened it and bleached it and everything else. And all we've done is literally go right the way over, and as you can see, you get this nice mottled effect. So you do have to be a little bit careful that if you've thinned your paint correctly, you'll be absolutely fine. Now the thing is, you can also notice I'm going straight over the green with the grey. Now don't panic a little bit too much, because I know when you think, oh, I've just painted it grey, as long as it's quite thin, it will absorb and blend, and that's what you're trying to do. And I'll show you some close-ups in a moment. But all we're doing literally is just running around everywhere with this grey. And to start with, you might think, oh, that's really strong. Give it time, let it soak in. But also, don't forget, we're going to go over this with a wash. The wash itself will actually turn round and really grey it out. So don't panic too much. I know it does seem a little bit strong, but it's one of those areas where you think, I've killed it, I've gone wrong, but it will come back. Now, a lot of people say to me about post shading, what do I post shade with? And this is my technique of doing it. And what we'll do afterwards, we'll pop around with a little bit of the actual black dirty thinners, as I call it, to go around. But what this does, it enables us to give a very nice grimed effect, but being quite subtle at the same time. So as you can see, it does work very, very nicely. But as I said, if you come in with black, it would have been too strong. Bear with this. But what this does, it lightens up and dirties at the same time. It sort of bleaches as you're going around the more. But you can probably see it does give a very, very nice effect. Now don't forget, you need this to go right to the bottom. To do round doors, crew access areas, and everything as you would. So we just do this tail. I bring the camera up a bit. If you're not too sure about this, easiest way is if you come along first and do it with literally very, very thin. The more thin it is, the better it is. But there we go, that gives us that nice effect there. And as I say, it bleaches out the areas. And as I always do, literally last pass right the way over everything. And it will just dust it down and knock it all back just a little bit, but nice, light, gentle coat everywhere. And there we go. I'm happy with that. I don't want to go any further with that now and do it anymore, because obviously what I want to do, I want to get some decals onto this. Then we can go round and blend those decals in to give it that sort of lived-in look of the actual paintwork. Then we can go back with a wash, then some post shading with a darker, dirtier wash and everything else. For the moment though, what I'm going to do now is let this dry overnight. The reason is, as I said before, and I've already done it twice, up here you might notice some weathering. That's because I left a fingerprint in it where I was holding it. This stuff doesn't dry like in normal acrylics. Normal acrylics, I'll come around, paint away, dry it, hold the wing, do the other wing. This stuff with the actual, the Gun Sanyo range, they're more like enamels. You get a nice skin in it and it feels dry to touch. You can come along and go, oh yeah, that feels nice and dry, it's lovely and smooth, but it's like an eggshell effect. You put your finger through, you melt through. So avoid that one. So I'm going to leave this to one side to totally dry off, come back, we can check it all over. If we're happy, we're going to give it a gloss coat and get on with decaling. Okay, so she's been drying overnight, and what I did about an hour ago, I gave it a coat of Johnson's floor polish. This is the new one. Don't panic, it's white, it's more milky, it smells nicer, does the same job, just looks a bit thinner. Okay, so that was all on, that's all dried as well now. Now, just be careful with it, because sometimes it takes a while to dry depending on your temperature. So what I tend to do is just whip over this with a hairdryer on a very cool setting as well, just to make them all totally dried off. So we've gone around and we checked absolutely everywhere on it, and we're really happy. The other thing as well I just masked up this belly area for the black for the gun blister that sits at the bottom here. So that was on and done, taking care of it. So we're all looking very smooth, very nice now. So now we can get on and get it decaled. Now for decaling, as I say, Give it a coat of gloss first, because obviously that'll help a smooth surface stop silvering. Another thing you can use is a decal softener and setter. For this one we're using Micro Sol. Now this is the red one, this is the setter. They do a blue version and that's really for softening decals to get them to sort of settle down and everything else. Personally I just use the red one. If you haven't got any of that, another alternative is to use an acrylic thinner like Tamiya X20A. Does the same job, but be careful because it will eat your paintwork when you go on, so don't move it around all too much. Over here in the background we've got some warm water. It's only warm, it's not hot, it's warm. If you use warm water, it makes it soften the actual backing paper a lot quicker and helps it react and stops it sort of getting that half-hearted shrinking, and then you get cracking on decals. Now decals, big old sheet here for this one. I'll just cut out the ones we need to explain a couple of things. Now usually what happens is that Airfix, especially in the olden days, they used to have real trouble with registry, and by registry what happens is these are printed by silkscreen method. Just around the tricky bit, I want to cut a bee's wing off. What happens is obviously they come along with one colour and they put like the black down, then the next colour on top, maybe the red. And what happens by registry is sometimes they don't get them accurately over the top of each other, and you end up with it being slightly off to one side and things like that. And they used to be a bit of a nightmare, but I must admit, looking at this sheet, we're all looking very nice in register. We're all good colours as well. Sometimes they can be a little bit, shall we say, miscoloured. Some of the reds look more like pink. But I must admit, this one is all very nicely in register. Okay, so what we're doing at the moment, we just get rid of all the bits like the black line that runs around the outside and things like that, because I don't want that to be on here. Okay, now some decal manufacturers, what happens is they're very, very thick, and that's the trouble, is when they're thick they don't like to conform and go down into panel lines, especially when they're recessed or raised even and things like that. So that's when you need something like the blue one, like a softener. Then you can put it down, the softener goes over top, softens the decal, helps it adhere and go down. The setter is more like the shock force, it shocks it down, makes it all shrivel up and gets down and beats down and everything else like that. But these are quite small, so that way we can literally pop along and put them on. So you can see it a little bit easier. What I'll do is I'll do the underside. So all we're going to do, clean brush, warm water, okay, and then we'll use a separate clean brush for the softener. I'm going to put the softener inside here. I'm not being clever, it's just I knock these over all the times and they go everywhere. So by putting them in a 40mm roll, they fit perfectly. Okay, make sure your brushes are clean, make sure you've got nothing on them, especially things like thinners, because obviously that can destroy a decal in seconds. We've got a bit of paper towel over here. So we've got two brushes, and then obviously somewhere here, he says, we have our instructions. So what we're going to do, just to show you for the minute, I'm going to do the big ones. What I'll do is I'm going to orientate the aircraft around so it's facing the same direction as it is on the sheet as well, just to make it easier. So what we're going to do, we'll start off with these real big ones to show them going down. So I'm cutting them out individually, just off the sheet, and that way I know what they are. Okay, if you've got some lockable clamps, which I had 10 pairs of earlier, here we go. Some lockable clamps. Leave a little tab where you've obviously got no film. Look at it, you can see it in the glass, okay? Face down into the water. If you put it face down, it stops them curling up and rolling up themselves. That's when you get cracking. Okay, just stick them in there for about 20 seconds. Okay, then what I do is I hook them out and I'll lay them down on the paper, just like this, and then sometimes I'll grab a little bit more water just over the top around the edges. And what you can do, when it's down here, you can see it where it's white and where it's not. And all we do is just give it a bit of a movement to see when it starts to move. It's starting to move already, but you don't want to force it, because otherwise that's when you get cracks and all the rest of it. So we just leave that going just for a second more. A bit more water around the front, and what I'll do is I pile them up on top of each other, and it helps keep them moist and all the rest of it. Now we've got the holes that we made in the wings here. I'll tell you what we'll do this one down here. We've got the holes where we've got the wings, but we'll go straight over the top. Once it's all set, we can recut those in. So what we're going to do, we're just going to come along and put some water down first, and because we've got a coat of gloss on here, the water literally just bubbles up. So if we bring you in just a little bit. Okay. Okay, the decal is now sliding very freely on the paper, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, now what you want to do is look at panel lines and how they rotate and how they look on the actual thing. So we know the W comes up to this one down here, and we know that the writing tip of the W comes to here roughly. So what we're going to do just for the moment is just slurp it in and slide the paper out. Okay, just on there like so. And then what we can do, we're going to go along and we're just going to make sure we're all in and rotated correctly. And we're all lined up and happy. So we know that it's just a little bit perhaps more this way. Bottom of the 9 comes up to this panel here. So it's going to sit in here something like that. Okay, and we'll just put the paper down there. And then what we're going to do, taking a cotton bud, we're just going to wet it in some water, okay, and then just wring it out between your fingers a little bit. Okay, and all we're going to do now is just literally soak up some of the excess water around the outside, just for the moment, get rid of that. And that'll get rid of any watermarks and things. Okay, then with the damp side of it, all we're going to do is very lightly give it a rub. And what that'll do is just push out the water. Okay, start at one end and work your way over. And then obviously it pushes to the side, it will soak up. And then what you can do is when you've got a lot of the water out, you can be a little bit more aggressive and just start pushing it over. Obviously on a light colour like this you can't see where the air bubbles are particularly, but obviously with the dark one you can. If you can see air bubbles in there, get rid of them. Okay, so you're all out. You've got probably about 75% of the water out. Then we're going to take the micro Sol, which is our setting solution, okay, on the brush, and all we're going to do is very liberally brush it right the way over the top. Okay, and go right past the edges as well, right over the top and everything else. Now what will happen is, or you're hoping will happen is, it will start to shrivel up. When it's shriveling up, then what's happening is, obviously it's getting sucked in and doing all its business. If it's not shriveling, don't panic, but don't touch this once this is on. Okay, now that's sat on there, you want to leave it for a bit to totally go off. So what I'm going to do now is using just the same ways that I've done that one, the rest of the aircraft completely right the way over it, putting them all on, and then we're going to come back and we're going to score the actual decals themselves with the carrier film where these panel lines are, so they really shrink down. So when we give it a wash in a moment afterwards, it will go right the way through the lettering, so it doesn't look a bit odd and just stop where the lettering is, especially where you've got the carrier film and things like that. But that's the basics to it. But what you want to do is, like I do, I just do the bottom, let that totally dry, then you can flip it over, do the top. When that's done, I tend to do the side ones as well. So there we go. I'll get on with these and you can join me at the end. Okay, so as you can see, decaling is all done. Turned out really, really nice. The only thing I will say is we've got a white line going through this particular decal, and they're not very nice. So if you're going to go for this one as, you know, perhaps more than an out-of-the-box build, shall we say, my advice would be use aftermarket decals for this. Loads of them available, and in some great schemes as well. So usual trouble, I thought they were all in register and very nice, and it's only when you get them on you can suddenly see, you know, we got problems here and we're going to have trouble. So anyway, next up, it's all been left to dry totally on. A couple of good coats of the Microsoft setting one, which is the Sol, right the way over to lock it all down. Left that to totally dry for around about 6 hours. Then it had 2 quite heavy coats of Future, as in the old Johnson's Pledge Clear stuff. Okay, right the way over. Any gloss will do, really, to lock down these decals. They're not the best ones in the world, so I needed them to go down without any silvering and all the bits and pieces. The only thing I did do, pop along with the blade and scour all the panel lines once they were dry, and then gave it another coat, okay, right the way over, to really draw them down and get rid of any silvering. So next thing up we want to do is make it a little bit more grubby. So all we've done, what we'll do, I should say, we've got some of the dark dirt wash, okay, and then using a clean brush, all we're going to do is literally come along and just going to pile this over the entire model. Because it's over a very glossy surface, you might need to give it a sort of roundward scrub. Okay, really rub it into the surface to get it to bite, and so it's quite even, and make sure you go absolutely everywhere with it. Okay, if it's looking a little bit gritty on the surface, don't worry too much, because when you wipe it all round it will be fine anyway. Okay, so we're just going round Now, you might be wondering why I haven't painted the exhausts yet and things like that. I'm going to do them afterwards because I want it to be a nice metal finish without too much wash on there and things. So we're just going right the way over everywhere on the model, completely on areas as well, like this tail that hasn't got any riveting or panel lines, but it's still going to need it, otherwise it's going to look too clean, because this will give it a slightly grubby appearance, and that's what we're after. So we're just going to go absolutely everywhere around it. So I'm going to carry on putting this all round. We'll let it dry off and then we can take it off.